to acquire an additional 7% stake. This deal closure marks a new phase of growth and stability for Max Life. We've now got on to the third step of the transaction and filed an application with IRDA for acquiring residual stake of 5.17% from NSI in Max Life. This will entail an outflow of about 843 crore. We have around 894 crore in our balance sheet to take care of this requirement. So we are well covered. We are hopeful of concluding this transaction in the coming quarter. We are also hopeful of concluding the 7% stake sale transaction to Axis in the next 12 to 18 months. I'd imagine you'll have some further nuanced questions on the transaction structure. However, since we have to still conclude many other steps of the transaction, my request will be to refrain from seeking any further details of the transaction structure at this stage. We will be happy to address those at an appropriate time. I will request you to restrict your questions on the call to the performance of MFS and Max Life. Now, quick highlights of our business performance for FY21. Our consolidated revenue, excluding investment income for FY21, was at 18,815 crore, a strong growth of 18% in the most challenging business environment. Consolidated PAT at 560 crore has grown at a strong 105%. Growth in profits was largely aided by one-off factors such as reversal of provision for impairment on financial assets and lower tax expense. These one-off gains were partly offset by higher new business strain due to shift in product mix towards non-par business. Now, moving on to the key business highlights for Max Life. Despite COVID-led challenges, FY21 was the most successful year for Max Life. A successful closure of Axis transaction and renewal of Yes Bank partnership for 5 years sets the stage for a sustainable and profitable growth trajectory of Max Life. Decade high new business market share of 10.8% improved by 107 basis points. Most importantly, Max Life achieved one of the industry-leading value of new business growth of 39%. VNB almost doubled in last 3 years to 1249 crore in FY21. NBM also expanded by 360 bits to an all-time high of 25.2%, primarily driven by increase in non-par and protection business and cost-saving initiatives. Max Life's NCEV grows by 19% year-on-year to about 11,834 crores. NCEV on operating basis has grown at 18.5% annualized, impacted by COVID provision. However, including non-operating variances, ROEV is at 22.4%. Max Life's individual APE has grown by 19% to 4718 crore in FY21. Q4 sales grew by 36%, driven by both proprietary and partnership channels. Max Life has outperformed the industry growth in new sales individual by growing 19% in FY21 versus the private insurers growth of 8%. Highest ever individual sum assured sold at 2.2 lakh crore. Individual new business sum assured grew by 22% versus 6% for private sector. The market share on sum assured touched about 15.6%, and very pleased to share that we enjoy a third rank in the industry when it comes to the sum assured. So really our protection focus comes out of this vector. Our overall protection sales grew 28% year-on-year, higher than the overall company growth. Individual protection sales have grown by 40% year-on-year, and contribution to overall sales has improved from 8% in previous year to 9% in the current year. Group protection sales grew by 10% year-on-year, ranked number 1 on e-commerce, direct, online and web aggregator marketplace for protection based on our market intelligence. So very happy to share that. Gross premium grew by 19% to 19,018 crore in FY21 with Q4 growth of 21%. Renewal premiums also grew by 15% to 12,192 crore. There's been an improvement in 13-month persistency by 80 bits to 84.1%, and 61st month persistency by 190 bits to 54%. Strong roots and investments in digital assets enabled transition to fully digital sales, recruitment, training, and governance in 4 weeks during the lockdown period. Agility in technology enabled faster new product launches. So we launched 14 new products or modified some products, and we launched some riders as well over the last 12 months. It enabled sales momentum and margin improvement. During FY21, company experienced 121 crore of net claims on account of COVID-19, which were neutralized by provisions held at the start of the year. We have made further provisions in excess of 500 crore to neutralize any adverse impact of COVID going forward. Our claim paid ratio improved by further 13 bits to 99.35% despite all the difficulties faced in this current environment, and the propensity of claims also went higher because of the COVID implications. Very happy to share that we were ranked number 1 in customer loyalty as per the annual syndicated survey of policyholders by Kantar. We were ranked number 2 in customer grievances incidence rate as per the Q3 disclosure with decade low mis-selling count and incidence rates. We've been extremely efficient in our capital management, with our ROE is consistently hovering around 20%, which is again best in class. Our solvency surplus is at 1341 crore with solvency ratio about 196%. Our AUM as at March 21 end stood at 90,000 crore, growing at 32% year on year, and our par AUM has grown by about 26% year on year. We are now the 4th largest asset manager of life insurance AUM. We also improved our ranking by 10 places to get to 24th amongst the great places to work for, and was amongst the best workplaces in BFSI space. So to really sum up, Max Life will continue its trajectory of driving strong shareholder outcomes with Axis as a new JV partner. With partnership with Axis having been strengthened and Yes Bank bancassurance renewed for another 5 years, significant investments in proprietary and digital channels, razor-sharp focus towards cost and improvement in protection mix, we are progressing well despite the current challenges. Good progress made on 5 pillars of Max Life strategy with predictable and sustainable growth, product innovation to drive margins, customer centricity across the value chain, digitization and analytics as a foundation, and augmentation of human capital, as I have detailed above. So on that note, we'll hand over to the moderator to open the floor for Q&A.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handset while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Nitin Agarwal from Motilal Oswal Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity and congratulations on good results. So my first question is how sufficient do you think will this provision be towards the COVID claims that we have prepared, 500 crores? Or put in other words, what sort of increase in mortality claims are you prepared for while making this provision? And how much of these provisions have actually flown through the P&L? Because a lot of it has flown through the EV. So any number that has flown through the P&L also.
Thank you, Nitin. Very warm morning to you. We feel confident about the provisions that we are carrying. Like I mentioned to you, throughout the year, last year, we had about 121 crores, as Nitin mentioned, of claims. So, as a reference point, we are carrying about 4 times, little over 4 times more to our P&L as well as to our embedded value. So I feel quite confident. However, sitting today with the numbers coming down now, there is reasonable confidence that we'll be able to manage. But as you know, there is a bit of unpredictability. So this is our best judgment at this point of time. I'm reasonably sure we will be able to manage within this number. But one, of course, needs to be watchful about it also.
Okay. And how much of these provisions have flown through the P&L?
So this is a provision. Actually, we have been a prudent organization, and we always carried pandemic reserves, etc. So we just reclassed that, and we will consume that. So we have not taken it through the P&L because it was already available. It's a part of prudent balance sheet planning for a life insurance company, and I'm very happy that we were always prepared for any pandemic.
Okay, sure. And secondly, are we now likely to see any increase in pricing of term products, especially the group term, and any steps that we are taking to mitigate risk?
Yes, I mean, one is mindful about COVID claim experiences, and honestly, a large part of that is reinsured also, and we might see price increases. But because we play in marketplace and we are one of the largest players on aggregators counters, we will attempt to be competitive and balance it out. So to answer your question, is there a price increase on individual business? There might be some. On the group side, I think the prices are being increased on the GTL side, which is employer-employee kind of areas. That's where we are seeing higher instances of claims. So those are two areas where we are reviewing the prices. And as you know, the group side is yearly renewable contract. So, it keeps changing depending on the instances of claims. That's a very normal thing, the way it's planned. But to summarize, we'll be dynamic. We do see protection as a long-term bet for Max Life Insurance. There is a lot of penetration still to happen. So we will take those calls to optimize for customers, to optimize for growth, and also to optimize for our margins.
Okay, sure. And lastly, on the persistency, now I see that we have made good progress on claims payout, customer loyalty scores, grievance rate. All of these indicators are improving. But on a comparative basis, we are still a little lower on the persistency number. So why is this so versus the peers? And where do you see this persistency in the medium term?
Yes, in the medium term, you will see an upside. As for our models, we do expect the numbers to go up, closer to about 86 odd percent. So you should see about 200 basis points. We are on a journey to increase our persistency. There's a lot of underlying work which is taking place. At the end of the day, it is combination of historical product mix, approach to how the channels have performed. So there's a lot of planning which goes behind it, and I'm hoping that over a medium-term basis, you will see growth. We had a rather difficult first half where you would have seen through our reports last year that we had a bit of a persistency decline year on year. We worked on it, and that's been covered now. Both 13th month as well as 16th first month persistency are about 100 to 200 basis points higher than how they were the year before. And I think we will be on an upward trajectory from here on.
And just to clarify here, is it possible to share how much indicatively this number will be, including the grace period? Because now month is over, we are already past 30 days over the quarter end. So because last year we reported 87% as on FY20. So
yeah, I mean if we were to compare apple to apple, because grace period means nothing actually. I mean, you compute persistency, but if you were to kind of eliminate the impact of grace period, this year we will be significantly better than last year.
So higher than 87 is what I read into it?
Let's say 87 was taking into account the impact of grace period. Assuming that there was no grace period, it wouldn't have been 87. It would have been a lower number. So wherever today we are versus eliminating the impact of grace period, we are significantly higher than last year.
Okay, sure. Thanks so much and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Nitin. Thank you for your interest.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sangeeta Purushottam from Cogito Advisors. Please go ahead.
Yeah, this is Andre, Sangeeta's partner. Congratulations for a great set of numbers. I had two sets of questions. The first set of questions really related to marketing. And what I wanted to understand in some detail is that what has really led to your increase in market share? What is your hypothesis? And if you could link it to your IMRB results from consumer loyalty, if you can delve into some detail as to what were the measures of loyalty on which you have emerged higher than the others, and correlate this to the question of having increased market share, and or any other reasons that you have for getting a fundamental insight on why do you think you have gained market share?
So, a direct mathematical correlation typically is very hard, but let me kind of break down first the Kantar survey and then our overall growth.
Right.
Kantar survey is a survey which is done on the customers of respective companies, which means the research company will go to customers of different life insurance companies, and they will seek or run a questionnaire with respect to how they feel about owning the policy of that particular company, how happy they are, how engaged do they believe, etc. It's a composite score that they come up with. They ask the questions, the questionnaire-based thing. On that basis, Max Life Insurance is the top private company based on customer loyalty, which indicates that our customers are most loyal compared to how the customers of other companies feel. That's point number one. When you look at it in terms of growth, I think growth is a combination of two things: acquiring new customers as well as upselling to your existing customers. Now, by having more loyal customers, the ability to upsell is pretty high, and we have seen increase in our upsell ratios. But a very large part of growth is also contributed by acquisition of new customers, and acquisition of new customers happen because of many things, because of expansion through distribution network. It happens because of new product categories which you end up launching, and the normal marketing efforts that is put in terms of promoting the brand and reaching out to the customers. So in a way they are linked but not in a direct way. The ability to, or the propensity for the customers to buy because they are more loyal does contribute to growth, but there are many other factors which also contribute to growth, including acquisition of new customers.
Okay, let me just rephrase my question. If I were to, let's say, ask a Hindustan Lever employee as to why has he gained share versus Procter & Gamble in, let's say, soaps or detergents or something, he may say that because we have a better product or we have better distribution or something else. I was trying to get an insight as to what is making you a gainer in market share. The fact that you've gained market share and your growth is there for us to see. I was trying to understand what do you think is the why.
Okay, three or four reasons actually. One most important reason is stranglehold in distribution, predominantly being caused by our promoter Axis Bank. It was a key reason. Axis Bank demonstrated very high rate of acquisition of our own of customers. Through our progress in expanding our products through protection and non-par savings, that also caused the market share to go up. Those are two categories where we saw disproportionate growth come through. Number three is the strength of the brand. Our consideration scores have jumped quite significantly, and that has led to more customer attraction. And last but not the least, I think overall focus on a distributed or diversified channel mix. So while on one side Axis did very well, towards the second half of the year we also found our own channels as well as Yes Bank channel to grow quite considerably versus the market average. Those are reasons why we believe we gained market share.
Thank you. If I could ask a second question, in terms of the products you have going forward, see that it's changing. And what are the
Hello?
So you're breaking in between.
Yeah, you're breaking in between. Can you repeat?
Would you like to join back the queue?
Okay, all right. Okay.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't
Thank
say
you.
11%.
The next question is from the line of Ajox Frederick from BNK Securities. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity and congrats on a good set of numbers, sir. Sir, I have a question. It's a very basic question on taking a provisioning on VNB, particularly the margin impact we saw. So for COVID, basically. So does this mean that this is factoring in the unexpected COVID claims of FY21 and pricing was not done for COVID when we started selling these products? Is my understanding right?
Amrit, do you want to take this?
Yeah. So, hi, Ajox. Thank you for the question. Ajox, this is, you can say tightening of mortality rate assumption that you can say on COVID. And largely it is, this tightening is being done in duration 1 and duration 2. So whatever we sold in FY21, obviously the claims coming in the same year are always will be lower, but the claims that could come in FY22 or probably let's say FY23, given how and when the rates kind of settle, is that additional tightening of the mortality assumption that we have done. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, that's very clear, sir. And sir, my second question is on the channels. Some of the checks which we do indicates again a focus towards traditional business, par business basically. Is it a strategy to diversify mix and basically normalize the par, non-par not going beyond a point? So is it a strategy to diversify mix by focusing on par?
Yes, to both the questions. It's a constant effort to remain diversified. You will notice that our mix on non-par actually went up this year, but you would also notice that it was in the range of 30 to 35%. We didn't allow it to go beyond of that. And you will also find that there is a distinct bias towards writing more and more traditional plans within that, savings and par savings and protection through our own channels. And you will see that we write a little bit more non-par and ULIP through our partner channels. So that's a part of the strategy to remain diversified, align the product mix to the channels for reaching out to the customers and meeting the demands as well as optimizing the overall margins for the company.
Got it, sir. Just one additional question again on some of the checks were indicating that focus was slightly on the lower end for Smart Secure Plus. Usually when a new product is launched, there's very strong focus in that product, and like we saw for Smart Wealth Plan. But this Smart Secure Plus is a very innovative product out there, but push is not very aggressive. And now that we're expecting one more round of price hike on protection side, what is the broad sense? Like if you can answer me in two categories. One is some protection demand out there, and two is why are we slightly more cautious on this product?
So, it's let me answer the second question first. We have always maintained that Max Life believes in a diversified product mix. We don't like to put all eggs in one basket. And ever since the evolution of the industry, you would have found that Max Life has maintained a product mix which is a bit away from how the normal market will be. Even during the peak period when the entire industry was selling more and more ULIP, we were selling more traditional plans. So, we always like to remain balanced, and it is for the purposes of ensuring that we are reaching the different customer segments, because these products are important for different segments, and we make sure that we meet a variety of needs for the customers. So that's the second question. On the first part,
I think Prashant, sorry to interject. I think Ajox's question is on our new protection plan.
Yes, Amrit, sorry, you're right.
So on the new protection plan, there has, we have launched it, and there's a price increase which is planned for. We are fairly aggressive about running it. Just to give you a sense, the sales are similar or better than last year. The demand has picked up in the month of April and May. There are, of course, some underwriting level, controls that in consultation with reinsurance companies that we've institutionalized. So it's not as if we are not promoting the product. It's just that we are a bit more cautious in view of what is happening because of pandemic.
Okay, sir. So probably once everything settles down, we'll have,
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned to you, protection is a long-term bet for Max Life Insurance. We have done a very good job. Our growth in last 5 years has been closer to 50%. And, once things around COVID settle down, we continue to maintain that momentum.
Got it, sir. So that's it from me, and all the best. That was very helpful, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rahul Bagadia from Lucky Investment. Please go ahead.
Thank you for taking my question, sir. Just a bit on the 88 crores that you have taken in the VNB margin. Is it, totally a part of the Q4 numbers itself, or how do you look at it? And correspondingly, what is the impact on, what is your sense of what the margins are and going ahead?
So take this, Amrit.
Yeah. So this 88 crores was actually provided for in the quarter 4. So the hit with respect to the 88 crores has kind of come onto this particular quarter 4, but the view has been taken for the full year. And I will, kind of reiterate, this is a prudence measure of ensuring that we are actually tightening the underlying implications of COVID into the VNB that we sold for this particular year. VNB also is a factor of multiple things, how you price it and how the reinsurance prices just kind of pan out. And if COVID is behind us, obviously this is a one-off hit that has been taken. But over a longer horizon, once COVID is behind us, we will see, this kind of gain accruing if other conditions around pricing and reinsurance kind of stays in place.
So just to clarify, but for this hit, your 88 crores would have been, the VNB would have been higher by 88 crores, right?
That's correct. Yes.
That's correct.
And your sense of margins going ahead, sir, FY 22, 23?
That's a good question. Actually, the outlook is perhaps similar to over short period, and it's a bit of crystal ball gazing, especially in view of COVID. I mean, honestly, we must understand that what this country and the entire world is going through is hugely unusual. In view of that, forecasting something over a short period of time is a bit difficult. But assuming that things recover well, I think over a short period of time, similar to what we have delivered this year, over a long period of time, meaning next 2-3 years, I think we should see a 100 to 200 basis upside from where we sit.
Okay. And sir, you've already mentioned because of the situation, it's a little bit tricky here, but any sense on what kind of growth you are planning out here over the next 2-3 years?
So, I mean, growth, Max Life is quite bullish with respect to growth. And just to give you a sense of numbers, we just went past April and May months, very two difficult months. For the first 2 months, the cumulative growth rates or year-on-year growth rates for Max Life Insurance is 57%, which is also on 2-year CAGR basis. We are strong double-digit growth numbers. So we continue to grow, but maybe a very strong double-digit kind of a growth rate is what we will target. Maybe closer to about 20%, between 15 to 20%. That will be my number at this point of time. That's what we are targeting.
Sure, sir. Thank you for answering my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shreya Shivani from CLSA. Please go ahead.
Hi, Prashant, with Settlement team. Question is, if I just look about the VNB performance for this year, excluding the 88 crore impact, margins have accrued by north of 500 basis points from under 22 to 27 this year. And obviously, there's been a pickup in non-par mix, about a 10-12% increase, and then there is some pickup in protection share. Even if I adjust for the margin gap of this product vis-a-vis some of the lower savings products, the 500 bips VNB margin expansion is still large. So now we could have got more margin benefit either from OPEX or within a category certain margins of certain products are better this year than where we would have been last year to lead to this kind of VNB impact. So if you can just try and walk through from under 22 to 27, how does it stack up?
So, Shreya, I will give you a very high-level answer. Maybe separately, you could talk to Amrit and we could give you that walk, because that walk may find it very hard to actually explain. But, I think the mix increases of protection as well as non-par savings, they will be the strongest contributors to our margin expansion. Also, there was tight control on expense, which would have added to the overall margin profile. So you're right. I think we just have been very tight on expenses, and we have altered the product mix more in favor of protection as well as non-par savings. That would have caused all of margin enhancement. But Amrit will reach out to you separately, and we will be able to share the walkthrough. Amrit, do you want to respond anything further?
Yeah, I'll just add actually, that's Adarsh actually. Adarsh, even the product that we launched, the new non-par, which was launched in FY21, that product fundamentally was of a better margin profile than what we saw, what used to exist in our previous product. So that's also an additional kicker. So it's not just that 10% delta from 20 to 32% movement in the non-par component. Even the 20% itself also came out with a better margin profile.
Yes.
Yeah, that probably explains. So you're saying the non-par margin or profile in 21 was better than 20, right?
Yes, it's a new product that we launched, Adarsh. We launched it in the month of July, actually. It's a new product that we launched. It was not the same profile of non-par that we used to have in 1920 or before that.
Perfect. This is useful. And second question, little more longer term question, and probably was a continuation of one of the earlier questions was from a brand perspective, right? We've done well in terms of market share gain, but just as a financial brand, your top three peers have a larger umbrella financial services brand, and now obviously we have Axis as a partner. How do you see that play out? Because we've still accreted market share with not having a big umbrella brand like an ICICI, SBI or HDFC. But now we have Axis, which can get co-branded a little bit. So how do you see that journey? Does it help, or we've been extracting whatever we could with Max itself?
So considering the current structure and ownership, etc., and the shareholder arrangement, the first step is to add Axis Bank's name. So in our tagline, we are going to say, a joint venture between Max Financial and Axis Bank. We are going to promote all our holdings are going to get changed. We are incurring branding expenses actually to promote that. That will definitely have an upside. The other upside I definitely see is for Axis Bank customers. And, Axis Bank does anywhere between 55 to 60% of the sales. I think that's going to be a very strong, foundational affiliation, because the Axis Bank will be able to promote Max Life products being a joint venture company of Axis Bank. That's also a big rub-off that we'll get. So for a very large part, I think the brand will start to play, kick in and start to play a big role. And as things evolve, etc., at a later date, we'll consider if there is a bigger rub-off impact possibility exists or not. But over a short period of time, this is how we are going to approach it.
Perfect. Thanks, Prashant. Thanks, Amrit.
We have, just to conclude, we also saw distinctly big shift in brand consideration, Adarsh, from about late 40s to our consideration actually jumped up to late 60s, which was one of the sharpest consideration increases that we have seen in the evolution of Max Life Insurance, predominantly because of COVID, where insurance itself started to find, but for a variety of pieces of work that we've done around protection sales, around being this more prominent through mass media or published material. I think the brand has already strengthened quite considerably, especially in the last 12 months. We feel good about that.
That's useful, Prashant. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sanket Godha from Spark Capital. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. My first question is on the EV walk. So the operating variance number of 80 crores, what we see, other than the non-COVID, other than the COVID provisions, is largely related to the tax refund what we got in the first quarter, right? So we did not have any significant positive operating variance coming either from persistency or OpEx in the current year, because this 80 crores seems to be exactly tying up with the tax refund what we got in first quarter. Is my understanding right?
Hi, Sanket. You're right. As we had disclosed even in the first quarter, we had a tax refund of 63 crores. So 80 crore has a tax refund of 63, and then the rest is actually some positive variance.
Okay, perfect. And the second question which I had was that right now, whatever VNB margins which we report around 25.2 is based on effective tax rate. Probably we pay significant amount of dividend in the current. We paid a significant amount of dividend in the current year, so we got a huge ATM benefit. So the margins were little on the higher side. So as the Axis Bank relationship has now become permanent, our dividend payout will substantially come down going ahead. I'm presuming so. So then will it have a bearing on the VNB margins because of effective tax rate going up, because Section 80M benefit will be relatively lower going ahead?
Yeah. So effective tax rate actually as a methodology, we don't necessarily take a short-term view. There is a defined methodology of taking a longer horizon view on how the tax structures and dividend flows will be. Maybe on the short period, the dividends would be of a lower order to support growth. But over a longer horizon, obviously there will be dividends which will be coming through in the business. So effective tax rate, actually, we haven't altered the effective tax rate in this particular year as compared to last year.
Okay. So you mean to say that the effective tax rate, what we bake in our VNB margin calculation is based on long-term dividend strategy rather than the current effective tax rate what you have?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean,
perfect.
you can't take 1 year views on how you're changing effective tax rate. There is a set methodology which actual team uses and which actually takes a longer view around how do you compute the effective tax rate.
So basically 25.2 is more on a normalized basis rather than one-time benefit what we have in the near term basically.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. And finally, just one question, the unwind rate in the current year seems to be a little lower at around 8.6% compared to 9+ what you usually have. So is it because we did a lot of non-par business and strips were used significantly and therefore we dipped into the old profit pool, and therefore the unwind rate was lower? Should we look at it in that way? And also if you can tell me how the unwind rate going ahead would be?
So unwind rate that you see in the EV walk is the management expectation of how the interest rate view will be at the start of the year. So and you will recall at that point, and I think that continues to be the case, that the view at that point of time was of lower interest rate. And that is what you see actually kind of come through when you see that our unwind from FY20, which was at 9.1, came down to 8.6 in FY21. So it's a view. In actual reality, what happens is you will have, the performance of the funds kind of come through where you will get actual return income on the fund, which actually has been significantly higher than our expectation. And part of that goes and sits in the non-operating variance. And that's how it is done. With respect to the view for the future, I think it will remain range bound, maybe a few basis points lower than how it was at the start of previous year, given the interest environment that we see at this point in time.
Okay, perfect. And finally, on protection business, so somewhere in the newspaper it was mentioned that we have made vaccination compulsory for 45+ guys, where the most for taking a protection business. So just wanted to know the likely impact on the growth of protection business in near term, because we grew it by 40-odd%, and even if I look at fourth quarter growth around 17% looks very healthy compared to the industry average. So just wanted to know the impact of it on the numbers. And this vaccination requirement of making compulsory is more of a reinsurance requirement, or we optionally took the choice of making vaccination compulsory to do term insurance incrementally?
We just to clarify, we have not made it. So to that extent, the representation in that article isn't correct. We haven't made vaccination compulsory. That's the clarification. However, at the front end, there are several underwriting controls that the company has deployed in consultation with their insurance organizations, so that we are selecting lives where we are almost sure about the quality of life, etc. Those are things that most of the insurance companies have recommended life insurance companies to adopt, and almost all players have done that. So we have done that too. However, we have seen an upside in the demand for protection, and despite those controls, I think our overall mix for the first 2 months is higher than the mix that we are seeing in quarter 3, quarter 4. The overall mix is closer to about 15%.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe finally, if one more I can pitch in, just on ULIP business, just wanted to understand that our ticket size seems to be little on the higher side compared to industry average, around 1.5 lakhs rupees ticket size. Have you seen any impact, or do you foresee any impact of the new tax rules with respect to ULIP, given our ticket size is on the little higher side compared to maybe other peers?
To be honest, not so far actually, Sanket.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's it from my side. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Abhishek Saraf from Jefferies. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Am I audible?
Yes, Abhishek.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. So most of my questions have been answered. Just wanted to understand on the reserving part. So we mentioned that we are carrying around 500 crore plus of extra reserving, but in the EV walk, if I see that it's around 340 crore on the EV operating assumption change and 88 crores on the VNB side. So what am I missing? Is it doesn't add up. So just wanted to understand that part. And secondly, was that related to the claim size, it seems that our reserving is much higher than what other peers who reported earlier have done. So what is making us provide more on the COVID reserve part?
I will answer the second question first, and then I'll let Amrit give you the recon. The answer to the second question is, Abhishek, you there?
Yes, I'm there.
So the answer to your second question is, when we saw the size of wave 2 versus wave 1, we just thought it would be prudent to be more conservative. So the claims in the first wave and the death rates and the infection rates are much lower actually. Wave 2 appears to be higher. So we have gone to be a little more conservative just to see how it unwinds. In times like these, it is good to be conservative. That is why you would have seen us build conservatism in our balance sheet, in our EV, in our VNB also to that extent, just to make sure that we are protected and we don't come up with surprises as we hit FY22. That's the reason. If we perform better, of course, it will unwind and come back to our financials. Amrit, if you could just talk about how the balance sheet reconciles to the EV.
Yeah. So Abhishek, absolutely right. 340 in the EV plus 88, and then you also gross up for tax as well. And the delta still is actually is our old CAT and pandemic reserve. So in our last interactions, whenever it would have happened, we had indicated that we have been carrying a reasonable size pandemic reserve, even though at end of FY20 we created a 10 crore small reserve, but beyond this 10 crore we are carrying in excess of 200 crore plus kind of a number with respect to our pandemic reserve. So a part of it we did use up in FY21 to neutralize the 121 with COVID claims that we kind of saw for ourselves. And the rest is what the differential is between the 500 and the match that you're doing on 88 by 340.
Okay, got it. One last bit, if you can just on a Yes Bank side, so is it possible to share what kind of share Yes Bank will now be accounting for in our business, and what kind of products are being sold on that counter? Can you just give some kind of understanding on that?
It's a very important relationship, and we are absolutely immensely proud of the relationship that we share with Yes Bank. They have been a part of our growth. Both organizations have evolved together. And we just concluded 16 years of our journey with Yes Bank. It's a very, very important relationship. If I were to look at last 2-3 years, the contribution from Yes Bank has been anywhere between 7 to 10%. And we expect that it will continue to grow at the same pace, at least the same pace as we grow as an organization. So we expect to grow. At this point of time, Yes Bank is growing. It is contributing positively. And while Yes Bank is going down the path of open architecture, as we all know, we really hope sincerely and wish that we continue to maintain the counter share or significant counter share on Yes Bank counter.
Sure. Thanks for that. Possible to share which could be the product mix through Yes Bank if we are.
Yeah, sorry, I missed it. The product mix will be pretty similar to the product mix that we will sell at broader banker level. But if the margin up or down, we will be able to share that with you. But predominantly ULIP as well as non-par, those two will make the large part of product mix that we sell at Yes Bank.
Sure. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nidesh Jain from Investec Capital. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity, sir. So firstly, on the dividend payout and capital position, our solvency has now been below 200%. What is the comfortable solvency margin that we would like to maintain, and how will the dividend payout policy will be there going forward?
We are, Nidesh, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to connect with you. On the dividend side, of course, as you know, last few years we had, we had to declare dividend for, facilitation of, buyback from Axis Bank, etc. All that is now behind us, so there is no need to declare heavy dividends. There will be marginal dividends that we may be declaring the organization, hence retaining most of the capital in the business to grow. In addition, we anticipate to maintain a solvency ratio anywhere between 180% to 200%. That will be our target over the next few years, and hence we will, at an appropriate time during this financial year, we will look at the need to raise any capital. It's not formed up yet. It will go through several approval processes, but there's a desire to actually buffer up the capital position by raising debt.
Sure. So, with respect to Axis Bank, do you see further synergies? It's already a very well-oiled relationship. We have been there for the last almost 10 years plus. So do you think after this tie-up, there is definitely a certainty that we are getting in terms of banker tie-up? But in addition to that, do you see any other synergies with coming to Max Life?
Yes, I'm very optimistic. Being a part of their group company or their joint venture, I think there are definitely significant synergies. Synergies, like I mentioned to you, in governance. Already, we see a few of their business leaders coming and sitting in our board. That adds to the heft. That adds to the knowledge, and a few of them are very, very experienced in life insurance space as well. So overall, strategically, their contribution to Max Life Insurance is going to go high. Brand rub-off, we were just talking about a little while earlier. That's a big contribution. We are also discussing how Max Life Insurance could participate in the new channels or new verticals that they're adding. The teams are discussing how we could work together to inject more analytics in overall sales process and improve penetration. Refinement in what we sell, product mix, especially in the area of selling more annuity or selling more protection, is going to get more weight. Needless to say, being such a large financial services organization, we do anticipate that we will be able to leverage some synergies with respect to procurement or people practices, etc., etc. So really, we are looking at leveraging this relationship in a 360 manner, and I'm very optimistic, Nidesh, that it will be a plus from where we have been so far.
Sure. Actually, on the credit life, we have not been a very We have not consciously focusing on that segment. But has any thought process changed with respect to that segment? And also, Axis Bank would also be having significant retail lending operations. So are we, is there a possibility to scale up credit life business from that channel?
Yeah, Amrit, do you want to take this?
So Dinesh, credit life, we have always indicated from as a strategic choice, it's individual business that we have been working towards, and that's where the granularity of business comes, sustainability of margin profile comes. And tactically, we have participated in credit life, and even within the bank, we do participate. And credit life actually, for the full year 21, did end up growing at a pace of 45% growth we saw in the credit life business. Overall, you'll see the group business at 30 because the term life business was largely held flat. And this credit life growth has come out of better penetration and activation across many counters that we run, including Axis Bank. As you would be aware, within the credit life space, Axis Bank actually runs an open architecture model, and that's been the case for a couple of years now. We will evaluate tactically as and when any opportunity kind of comes through. But the margin profile of this particular category, especially in the background of mortality, again becomes extremely important for us to kind of keep a view on.
Sure. Thanks, Amrit, and thanks, Prashant. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nishant Chavati from Kotak Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. This is Nishant here. Two questions. One was really on your channel mix, and you have invested a lot in your proprietary channel. You have guided some time back that probably the channel mix will kind of get a little bit more balanced with the ratio of Axis Bank coming down over time. But if anything, we can see the share of Axis Bank going up this year. So what do you think should be the channel mix maybe in 22 or 23?
So that's correct. Actually, we made investment, and you would have noticed that the contribution of own channel has been growing. Last year was a blip year. I must share that with you because of the model. I mean, industry-wide, if you see, the growth of banca channel is higher than agency or proprietary channels. That has happened because agency is a channel where agents go and meet with the customer, and the profile of agents where many times homemakers or retired people are also agent advisors, they were reluctant to walk out, as against the banca channel model where it is more dependent on bank customers or footfalls. So proprietary channels did take a hit, and you would have noticed that even in our growth, significant part of the growth is also contributed by banks. Our own channels actually grew 10%. So hopefully as COVID settles, we will be able to rebalance that. We are yet to see it because as this year has begun again, we have seen COVID. As long as COVID lasts, the impact on proprietary channels will be a bit more than how it is on bank channels. But assuming that COVID will be out of our way through this year, I anticipate that our own channels will start to grow at least as fast as the bank channels, and that will be the objective. So we will maintain or expand the proportion of own channels going forward.
And any particular ratio or guidance you could give in terms of where does Axis Bank settle or where does proprietary settle maybe 2 years on?
Yeah, I mean, we have been historically for the last few years, we have been close to 30%. So at least that level is one would definitely try.
So, and I think you also mentioned that you're looking at around 100 to 200 basis of guidance on margins. I think
over a longer period, Nischint.
Sure. Okay. And what are the immediate triggers for if I have to look at the margin profile for next year or so? What are the immediate triggers, or do you think that probably VNB growth next year will be driven more by volume than by margin expansion?
So it will be a combination of sales growth and a bit on margin expansion. Really, if you were to look at our product mix, we have optimized for product mix. There are some thoughts on how we could enhance the margins better. But I think what will also start to kick in is basis our size, some bit of scale benefit. We saw that come last year, and we will continue to see in next 2 to 3 years. And that will be one of the biggest sources of margin expansion.
Perfect. Thank you very much and all the best.
Thank you, Nischint.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rishi Jhunjhunwala from IIFL. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I have a couple of questions. Firstly, on your non-par portfolio, right, around the guaranteed return products, I just wanted to understand, how has our hedging exposure changed over the last couple of years, and as a result, the consequent impact on the margins that we are driving from these products.
So actually, we changed our view a little bit with respect to non-par savings, predominantly after FRA were allowed somewhere in 2019.
Right.
Before that, we had a different view. You would have seen our overall exposure to non-par was a bit limited. But with FRA coming on board, which is a much more efficient design to hedge, one was more comfortable to go ahead and increase the proportion. So we increased the proportion from 20% to about 30%. I think we do intend to keep this ratio in the range of or similar ranges. So you will not see us go 40-50%, but yeah, one would take the exposure of 25 to 30-35%, that kind of range. That's our view on non-par savings, because we can hedge it better.
And the trend on profitability as a result, I mean margin?
Of course, it has had a positive bearing on margin, and definitely one of the biggest contributors of margin enhancement of about close to about 360 basis point has been increase in non-par savings.
Great. The second question is on the protection side, right? So some of your larger peers are suggesting that the market is not looking that great, and as a result, they are kind of pulling back in terms of selling retail term protection. Just wanted to understand your thought process. Do you see it as a tactical opportunity to gain higher market share, or do you really think that some of those concerns are probably unjustified?
So, in times like these, of course, there are several forces that you need to be cognizant of. One big force is, of course, your relationship with reinsurance companies. As things stand, reinsurance companies have had to take losses on account of COVID. And hence, some of the norms around underwriting will be a bit more stringent. But our view is that we will be cautious over a short period of time, but protection is a long-term growth area for us, and we will continue to operate with competitive product design, improvement in our processes, making sure our pricing is competitive in the market, etc., etc. To win over a long period of time, we do intend to remain a potentially strong player in the protection space.
Understood. And just one last quick one. Can you give us some sense of our share of business in Axis Bank channel, given that it's an open architecture, and how it has changed versus last year?
About 85% is our share on the counter. It may go up or down depending on how it moves, but about 85%. Over the last few years, it's at some stage we were 100%, then we were about 95%. So there's a rebalancing which is taking place, but we hope to remain to have the lion's share on the counter.
Great. Thank you so much. All the best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Manoj Bahety from Carnelian Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi. Good afternoon, Jatin. Good afternoon, Prashant. First of all, let me congratulate you for consistently reporting a good set of numbers. I have a couple of questions. First one is if I see over last 3-4 years, the margin improvement of Max, and along with that, if I look at the product mix change, it appears that a sizable proportion of this margin improvement is contributed by a rising share of protection business. And also on the protection business, one thing which I was seeing when I was seeing the financial reporting of one of your peers, that a lion's share of the profitability is contributed by the protection business. I assume that the same will be in your case too. So how do you see the sustainability of margin of protection business? I understand that it will be a high growth vertical for the industry as well as for you. But along with that high growth, whether these kind of margin on protection are going to sustain and how it compares vis-a-vis, let's say, international insurance companies protection margins. Yeah, these are like a couple of questions from myself.
Amrit, do you mind taking this?
Sure. So, Manoj, your observation is correct. The margin improvement, there are two levers. There is obviously the product mix lever, which is non-par protection, non-par savings, along with the efficiency which kind of keeps coming through as the business rises in scale. Specifically coming to protection margins and protection profiles, actually protection margins have been falling sharply in the last few years, and consequently you have also been seeing the protection prices actually increasing. Now, if you really go back in time and see the history of how protection popularity and protection prices moved, it used to be quite expensive product design. Then the popularity started rising. There was competitiveness with respect to pricing. Everyone started taking actions around pricing. There was emergence of experiences which started coming through both for the life insurers and for the reinsurers, because this category is largely reinsured, and the reinsurance support is extremely important. And we are at a point in time where there is now, a resettling of the pricing expectations around protection, and hence the consequent last 1.5, 2 years, you have seen a price rise which actually is happening, which is happening both from ensuring that you are on this particular category, trying to protect your margins as well. So even for us also, I think beyond, if you look beyond COVID, there will be a right place and right play of where the margins will have to move towards, where you will have to optimize for market penetration, market shares, along with margin thematic. This is a product category which is important for us to drive margins. It comes with associated risk, and hence consequently the reward assessment by the insurer also has to be equally strong. And we will keep a view of these things when we are pricing a product forms.
How do you see protection margins in India vis-a-vis like international players? I think India is abnormally high, and if it starts like as the category size starts growing, and if these margins starts normalizing, then how do you see the sustainable margin going forward?
That may not be correct actually.
Yeah.
Indian margins may not be higher than international margins. Actually, India across the board operates on the lower side of margin, including protection. It's a more competitive space where even the pricing is quite competitive. So I think a large part of normalization basis experience, etc., has happened now. I don't anticipate that the margins will continue to fall. If there is any new experience which is coming out, it will get reflected in the pricing. So my expectation is that companies will try to protect their margins by increasing prices.
Okay. Is it possible to share the protection by margins separately?
Actually, we don't. It's not a part of our disclosure.
Okay. Thanks for taking my question, and wish you good luck.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Vinod Rajamani from HSBC. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks so much for taking my question. Just on this, the additional reserving that you've done for COVID, just a hypothetical question, but just wanted to know at what level, additional reserving will the solvency get impacted? That's question number one. And then can you give some color on how much of the reserving buffer that you've created, how much of it you would have utilized, say, up to date? I mean, if that is possible. These are the two questions I had. Thank you.
Basically, on first one, really far away. We have close to about 200% solvency, 196, 197% solvency. The breach on solvency happens at 150%. And every percent for us is close to about 30 crores. So you're talking about 50% in 30 crores, which is 1,500 crores. So really far away.
Right.
On the second question on the reserves, last year, as you can see, we saw only 121 crore. So versus that, this provision is significantly larger, and we hope that we'll be able to manage in this result.
Right. How much would you have used, Prashant, in this period from the year-end reporting to date? I mean, some color on that, if it's possible.
A fraction of that, actually.
Okay.
Why I'm not giving you a number is, the claims have started to come. So I don't want to prematurely share the number. But, looks at this point of time sitting, considering that the numbers come down and India gets vaccinated, etc., I'm reasonably confident that we'll be able to manage in a lower number than what we have provided for.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Prashant. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Neeraj Toshniwal from UBS Securities. Please go ahead.
Hi, Prashant. Congrats on the set of numbers. So 2 questions. One is on the deleverage strategy at Max, if anything is happening around. And second, on the protection price hike, we have already taken some. How much was that and how much is in pipeline, if at all?
Thanks, Neeraj. I'll request somebody to take this question. Samrit?
Sorry, Neeraj. I actually couldn't hear your first question so well. If you could just say it.
First was on the deleverage, basically on the pledge, anything happening around?
Okay. I think I'm going to ask Jatin for that first question.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so on the deleveraging, actually, the thing is that the promoters have always been committed to, sort of deleverage at different points in time. As you could see that, they have monetized a significant part of their ownership in both Max Financial as well as they divested their entire shareholding in Max Healthcare to that effect, and then they monetized some other assets as well outside of some of the listed company share. So that is one thing. The second is that the pledge level as it is, has been very comfortable, is now in a very comfortable zone. I'm not on the private side or the family side, but what I know is that, there are a few things which are happening or have happened, which will, at the current share prices, will reduce the pledge level to maybe around 60%. So to that extent, I think the pledge level is quite comfortable. Having said that, their intent to monetize at the right time some of their other assets as well continues, and so you will see them, continuing with the deleveraging initiatives. But as it is, the pledge level will be quite comfortable. I think shortly, if it already is not at those levels.
Okay. On your second question, which was around price hike, when we launched the new product in April, there was an inbuilt price hike in the product. As you're aware, the product has multiple forms and multiple ages. So I would say anywhere between 5 to 10% was the hike that actually happened with this new product launch. With respect to future product price hike, I think we will take a considered call, keeping all the aspects around pricing in the environment and also the reinsurance implication before we decide on the price hike.
Got it. And recently we had some digital initiatives in terms of tie with some startups. Anything happening around and anything interesting coming out of that?
So, Prashant, I'll take that, Neeraj.
Yes, please.
Neeraj, actually every year annually, we do run an accelerator program wherein we go out and outreach to various startups, and in FY21 we had the second cohort of this particular startups kind of coming through. We again ran the program. There were 6-7 use cases which were specifically given out in the market. We saw upwards of 150 startups kind of applying. We have shortlisted a total of 4 or 5 startups with whom proof of concepts are actually being done, and these are across value chain dimensions of a more health engaging platform, underwriting capabilities, capabilities to read, process documents actually more effectively and more better. So those POCs are actually in various stages with some of these providers. Some of them actually come and become mainstream. but it's our structured effort of actually outreaching in the market to ensure we are, kind of scouting for new technology changes that are happening in the environment.
And just to conclude this, Neeraj, we take this very, very seriously. So on that day, when the team shortlists many people, everybody in the leadership team, me, Vishy, who's our DMD, our head of, our CEO, Amrit, at least 5 or 6 of us spend about the full day going through the presentations. On one side, it gives an opportunity for the companies who we select to come and work with us, but on the other side, it just creates tons of awareness for us to know what is happening in the marketplace and constantly evolve ourselves.
Got it. That is helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Prateek Poddar from Nippon India Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So just one question. This 88 crores of provisions on the VNB walk, is this one time?
Yeah, Prateek, as I said, this is actually, we have kind of tightened some bit of mortality which might come out of the sale that we have done in FY21 due to COVID, which could come out probably in, duration 1, duration 2 of those policies. So you can call it one time, yes.
So fundamentally, we have not altered the mortality assumptions, right? That's the correct understanding.
No, not for long term.
Yeah, for long term you haven't, right?
No.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Abhishek Khanna from Jefferies. Please go ahead.
Hi, I had one small question. What were our total death claims in FY21, gross and net of insurance, if you could provide that, please?
So gross for FY21 was 1349 crores and net was 1009 crores.
And the 121 crores number that we have provided for COVID is, I'm assuming, net of insurance, right?
No. I mean, within 1009, 121 is also sitting. And 121 is net of the insurance, correct?
Got it. Thank you so much. That's it from my side.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Abhishek Sira from Jefferies. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my question has been answered. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you just did.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Mayank Bukrediwala from Franklin Templeton. Please go ahead.
Hi team, thanks for taking my question. I'm going to harp on that same 88 crores on the VNB and the close to 300 crores on the EV. So what you're essentially saying is that this 88 crores is something that you expect to pay out in the next 1 year. And would it be fair to assume that even the close to 300 crores that you have created on the EV, even that is something that you expect to pay out in the next 1 year? Or are these numbers a part of your value in force? As in, are you arriving at the 388 post discounting over a period of years?
So, Mayank, this is a COVID-related provision, keeping a view of what kind of an implication can come through during this pandemic. And now, pandemic timelines very difficult to kind of predict. It's a fairly evolving time frame. So this is a pandemic reserve that we have created for ourselves. Use it, we may not use it also. It all depends upon, how and how much of the deaths will kind of come through. As Prashant kind of indicated, he was kind of giving a sense that if 121 was the number.
Is there Amrit?
Yeah, hello?
Yes, you dropped off a little while.
Oh, sorry. I wasn't. Okay, let me just reiterate again, man. What I was saying is 500 crore is a provision that we have created for a pandemic, and at this point in time, we are undergoing a pandemic situation. Now, is there a definitive view that we will end up using that in this year? The answer is no. It's a pandemic reserve. As in how long the pandemic lasts, what is the implication of that pandemic? It might get used or might not get used as well. And it's extremely difficult at this point in time to kind of give a very definitive sense of how and what it will be. It's a constantly evolving situation. Very closely we are monitoring it, but we feel comfortable that I think we have adequately and very prudently reserved us.
Have we lost him again?
So what Amrit is saying is that, this is quite prudent. This can be over 1 year, this can be over many years, but what we have thought through is that this is what the reserve should be, and therefore we provision for everything sufficient.
Okay, so the 88 crores is not essentially a discounted number, it's a one-off. And so my question is that, if I adjust for this one-off, your margins for the full year look closer to 27%. And so when you're giving a guidance of an increase of about 100 to 150 bips over a period of years, are you giving this guidance over the 25% or over the 27%?
Over the 25% actually. Any number is not a static number. There are many moving pieces. The number of 27 could become 25 depending on change in product mix, our view on protection, etc. So, a more conservative number or a base number from our perspective is what we have reported. We definitely see an upside from here on of about 200 basis points over a medium-term basis.
Understood. And just one last question. One is, if you could just give me the OPEX number for the quarter, the non-commission OPEX. And the other question is more on the outlook of OPEX. Now, I see that we've got about, after 2-3 years of increasing the employee count, we are at about 15,000 employees. So for whatever growth you're forecasting for the next 2-3 years, what sort of OPEX investments will we have to do, and will we have to increase our employee count from the 15,000 level further from here over the next 2-3 years?
There will be increase, but it will not be a step increase. There will continue to be increase because as we continue to grow as a business, we will have to deploy more resources. In the same way like it has grown for the last few years, we will see employee count going up. As far as expense is concerned, I think it will be a part of disclosure. I don't have that number in front of me. If you could share what was the expense, or maybe if you could write to us, we'll be able to give you that number. As far as expense increase is concerned, I think expense increase will be circa 10% year on year is what we have planned for. We just need to review that. As things stand, we are looking at our business very differently, and throughout this year, we are going to look at a new strategy for Max Life Insurance, which we will roll forward from next year. And once we do that, we will be able to give you a clearer view on how the expense increase will look like. Sitting today, the plan is about 10% expense increase year on year.
Got it. Which ideally means if it's a 10% OPEX increase, one should assume a small amount of operating leverage playing out every year. Would that be correct?
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Yes.
Okay. Got it. Perfect. I'll take the number later from Amrit.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sangeeta Purushottam from Cogito Advisors. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is here again, Sangeeta's partner. Now, is my understanding correct that pure protection product is higher in terms of margin, but lower?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but your audio is not clear, so it's breaking up. Requesting you to please try using the handset mode while speaking.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
is my understanding correct that the pure protection product is better in terms of margins, but lower in terms of ROE? And if this, whether or not this is correct or not, could you tell us in terms of your financial metrics, how do you balance your ROE aspirations and your margin aspirations? And how does that influence your product mix going forward?
That's a very good question you ask. Typically we will target ROEs, healthy ROEs in the range of about 20-odd%, and protection is no different. Protection is good in terms of margin, but it is also reasonably good in terms of ROE, is the straight answer. When we make the decision on products, there are 3 or 4 vectors which are kept in mind. Number one is customer value proposition, and that's the starting point. Whether this particular product has customer demand or not, or what are customers looking at, and we determine that basis research, basis talking to distributors, basis talking to sales people to find out if this product will do well or not. Once that is done, then you start to look at the financial outcomes, including the features, and the financial outcomes will be seen in terms of margin, also in terms of strain as well as ROE. Those are factors which are kept in mind, and we kind of optimize it depending on try to hit a sweet spot, actually, to put it simply. Try to hit a sweet spot, and once those are all triangulated, we go ahead and launch the product.
Sorry, so you said your pure protection products are not lower in terms of ROE?
Not really. They're not.
Okay.
So, yeah, this is Amrit. I'm sorry, I got dropped by Prashant and everyone. I'll just reiterate. I think we have a hurdle rate that we look, even from an ROE perspective, keeping the strain in play. And what Prashant is indicating is that there is a bare minimum ROE that we try to do. And generally, protection products are, again, healthy from an ROE perspective also. They're not any different, actually, or not treated any differently.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Ajok Frederick from BNK Securities. Please go ahead.
Thank you for taking my question again. Just one data keeping question, sir. Out of this 121 crores, if you can split it across individual, credit life and GPI, that will be helpful.
Amrit, do you have that number?
I don't have it handy, but Ajok, I will provide that.
Definitely I'll take it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the last question for today. I would now like to hand the conference back to the management for closing comments. Over to you all.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being on the Max Financial Earnings call. We wish you good health and fitness in these unusual times. We look forward to more such interaction in the future. Thank you once again, and goodbye, and have a good day.
Thank you. On behalf of Max Financial Services Limited, we conclude today's conference. Thank you all for joining. You may now disconnect your lines.